Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 23 of An Action Filmmaking Podcast. I'm Tommy DiNucci. I'm here, as always, with Mike Messier. And today we are getting into the spooky season, and we're going to be talking about what I think should be a zombie classic, movie called Infected. That's probably my first true big role in a movie. It was directed by Glenn Ciano, and it was shot in the woods of Foster, Rhode Island, many falls ago. So we're excited to get into the Halloween season and talk about the zombie flick. But before we get into that, Mike, I noticed there's a little bit of a different background than normal. Could it be true that the rumors are that you're on the road right now? You're not at large. You're not running from the law. You're actually on your way to a film festival, right?
Yeah, I'm right on my way to San Angelo Revolution Film Festival in San Angelo, Texas. This Friday and Saturday is the actual festival. Saturday at 11 a.m. My documentary, which you actually have a thanks credit on, Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary, will be making its Texas Film Festival debut. Thank you. And it's got about 5 or 6 other short films in the package. So if anyone happens to be in San Angelo, Texas, you're more than welcome to come. I actually have an additional pass that I probably won't be needing. So if anyone claims it,
Michael,
let me know.
you'll be scalping tickets
Yeah,
outside.
I got film festival tickets.
Well, that's pretty cool, Mike.
Yeah,
Congratulations, and that's
thanks.
exciting that you're on the road for a film festival. I'm actually on the road for a film festival this weekend too. I'll be
Good.
headed to New York with the Verdi Productions team. We'll be traveling down there to celebrate Knockout Blonde, the documentary film I co-directed alongside Rick Lazies, and it's going to be very exciting because there's a really good chance that who knows, maybe there could be some wins in the future. And I'm checking in with Kim Kaling. I'm checking in with Anna Gick. How is everyone doing? It's good to have you back on with us. We appreciate you rolling with the punches. We're going at it a little bit later than usual. Normally we try to do this in the early part of the day, but today we're switching it up a little bit. Mike was traveling; he was on the road. I had some calls to get to. I'm finishing up a bunch of, there's a lot going on right now. I'm about to start up a film in November. So
Is
what
that
that means is
Tommy? Is that 100%?
it's looking pretty solid, brother. And
Good.
we'll be able to relinquish more information on the upcoming weeks of And Action.
Yeah.
But I can say this: it will be, in the New England area. So maybe we can get some of our New England people involved in the movie. Who knows? But we talked about this on the pre-production show. A lot of times when you're about to go make a film, it's almost like you got to get all your affairs in order because you know that you ain't going to be able to get into anything else for the next month or two. So last night I was actually chatting with you. Mike was traveling to Texas from Florida, making his way across the country sideways style. And I was calling him late night, probably around 10 or 11. And I'm working on currently a script called My Father, Muhammad Ali, that I'm co writing with Muhammad Ali Jr. himself. And I was working on the script. It was late, it was probably around 10 or 11. And I could feel like I was in striking distance of the end. And I remember talking to Mike, and I was like, Mike, Mike does this sometimes. Michael just like pull all nighters, and I'll just work all night long. And I don't do that very often. My style is usually more like, get a couple hours sleep, wake up in the morning, and do my thing first thing in the morning. Mike likes to burn that midnight oil and do the owl sessions. So I said, Mike, I might take a page out of your book. I think I'm just gonna fucking push and just keep writing this fucking script until I'm done. And I did. And I just kept going and going. And, a little bit of caffeine, get the right music playing. And I got to the end of the story. And I remember like wanting to quit, like I finished around 3:30 in the morning. And I remember wanting to quit like around 2. And I was like, oh man, you're so close. And my little tip to anyone who's like on one of these all night binges, maybe that'll be we'll do like a long form episode one night on the all nighter and how you get through it. That'd be a fun episode. But
Sure.
one quick little tip was just take a couple 5-minute breaks. Like don't lay down or anything. But I just like would get up, I'd take a walk, grab a drink, go to the kitchen, whatever. Okay, and I'm back at it. But because sometimes if you're just doing the 4 hours of staring at the screen in the middle of the night, you're gonna fall asleep. But that's not what we're here to yap about today. We're going to get focused and we're going to jump right into it and talk about this movie Infected, because there's an awful lot of meat on the zombie bone here to talk about.
There is, and I think what's just to jump in a little bit. I think you as an actor, you probably had some real growth because you had scenes with Michael Madsen. You played his son, which is pretty impressive, and also a guy that's become a good friend of yours, William Forsythe, is again in this film. I think wasn't he an Incubus as well? So Forsythe's in this one, and he's a great actor. And I watched this movie again, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I thought the voiceovers by Madsen were particularly well grounded, like. It seemed like he was kind of in the zone with his voiceover narration that kind of gets us through this movie.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the voiceover, Mike. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but that was definitely something that was kind of a really nice way to piece the whole story together. There's nothing like hearing Madsen's gravelly voice. He's got that iconic cowboy kind of, sound to his voice, and it just really resonates. So, quick backstory on this one. What's the movie about? Well, this movie basically tells the story of a group of camp and hunters, if you will, that are kind of long lost friends. It's one of those things where I don't know if you maybe as a kid, dad would pile you into the car and you'd go see one of your cousins or a family friend, and they'd be the kind of family friend that you'd see maybe only once a year. And you have that awkward but still fun kind of hangout with the kids, and you grow up with each other, but you only see each other like once a year. Well, this tells the story of a weekend kind of like that, only the kids have gotten a little older now, and it's even more a little kind of awkward and maybe a little too old to be on this trip kind of a thing. And what do you know it? A zombie outbreak happens. And now suddenly these campers that were at this hunting retreat, they've got supplies, they've got weapons, and they've got all that they need to survive and avoid becoming infected.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you.
There's, and I don't know, Tommy, if this is just something that my own imagination put into it, but I did feel with Infected, there was some foreshadowing almost to the COVID vaccine or the COVID virus, I should say.
Well,
Just
it
the
is fun to
paranoia.
it's fun to look at any of these these post-apocalyptic films. We look at them with a totally different lens now after 2020, don't we? Like when we would watch these movies before, we'd be like, "Oh, that's cool to think of what it would be like if the whole world was going to die of some weird disease." But man, during pandemic, motherfuckers were like, "Ah, I think this could be the beginning of the zombie apocalypse." So if what do they say? Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, brother.
Life.
But yeah, you do mention a good point though. This movie came out. We shot this in the fall of 2011, which there is something about making a horror movie during the fall and that kind of Halloween season. It's fun, man. I mean, I don't know, are you a big Halloween guy, Mike?
I like Halloween a lot. I mean, I like the crispness of the weather, and I like the idea of Halloween. I wish
Is
I'd
that a
had.
big man? Is that a big man thing?
I don't know if it's a big man thing. It's just I
The
kind of. I mean,
crispness. You like a crisp, cool day?
I like. Well, yeah, that's true. I do.
Yeah, it's a big man thing.
I'm a jean and t-shirt type of guy normally, which living here in Florida now, I can't do that as much. But when I was in New England, if it was jeans and t-shirt weather, that was my favorite type of season, whatever it was. But I like Halloween. I wish I've had more exciting Halloweens in my life, to be honest with you. But I do like
Oh,
the Halloween movies, like the actual series of Halloween films, even the one with the masks. I thought it was pretty good. The Season of the
part
Witch.
3, Season of the Witch.
Yeah. So I dig Halloween. And yeah.
Well, Mike, I love Halloween. It's my favorite time of year. I think it's that, what I like about it is everybody can celebrate Halloween. I don't care what kind of background you're from, where you grew up, or whatever. We all can have some fun and kind of put a costume on and be somebody else for one night and get some free candy. Who doesn't like that? And I also, like you said, I'm a big fan of the horror movie element and how that's kind of just hand in hand with that season. That said, it was really fun to make this movie. This one was produced by Chad Verdi, written by Glenn Ciano and Rob Rotundo, and it was directed by Glenn Ciano. And if you do a little bit of film forensics, you can go back, and you already did it, Mike. You can start to see some connective tissue here between this movie and Incubus, which was Glenn's first movie, and now you see, okay, William Forsythe was in both of them. I was in both of them. We had just did a movie, and someday we're going to go into this in long form, but we did a movie called Lucy's, which starred Michael Madsen. So we had like just did that movie in August, and I want to say we began production in this film in mid to late October, early November, something like that. So yeah, it was one of those things where you can see some of the dots be connected. And I remember working with Michael Madsen for like just a couple days during the filming of Lucy's. And the movie business is really unpredictable. So like I was hoping that Infected was going to happen, but at the time I wasn't sure. And Glenn and I were already talking about, there was a really great role in there that just made sense for me to play. And I was kind of hoping it happens. And I remember sitting with him in the car and being like, oh man, I really want to play opposite Michael Madsen, because you get it, Mike. I mean, I don't need to pound anyone over the head on this to kind of mention what a big influence Michael Madsen was in cinema in the 90s. In his role in Reservoir Dogs alone, Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, playing Mr. Blonde, it's just so iconic, him standing there with a straight razor, terrorizing that poor police officer tied to a chair. I mean, like, Michael Madsen's a very much a legend in the world of 90s cinema. And beyond that, I don't mean to just pigeonhole him, but there's a
He's
lot of
Bill in
films.
Kill Bill. Isn't he Bill in Kill Bill 1 and 2?
No, he's not Bill, but he's one of the assassins in
Okay.
in the kind of organization that Uma Thurman is up against. But yeah, it's one of those things, Mike, where that was probably the biggest draw for me. I've always loved zombie movies. I always loved the fact that I was excited that there was so much in this script that Glenn and Robert Tundo wrote and Glenn Ciano wrote, that I was excited for the opportunity to do a bunch of new things, like shoot a gun, have a stunt, have a lot of fight scenes, drive a car in a crazy maniacal way, a lot of like stunt driving, um, and a lot of like just one-on-one dramaturgical stuff, being able to have a one-on-one scene with, in the film, if you watch it, I have sort of, my character has a strained relationship with his dad, and having some of those scenes take place with Michael Madsen, which, by the way, for him were, kind of close to home, which he shared with me. That was a really kind of exciting thing. So perfect time to make a movie, perfect kind of cast of characters. You got William Forsythe. We had mentioned a couple of the others. Christy Romano was in this film.
She's
Who?
from iCarly.
No, not
iCarly.
iCarly. She's from Kim Possible and Even Stevens.
Yeah.
And yeah, she was definitely one of the first actors that, it's funny, we talk about this a lot. There's actors that like kind of touch different age groups of people, meaning like, uh, if I mentioned somebody like Michael Madsen to a person who's in their 30s or in their 40s, maybe 50s, they would know who Michael Madsen is. If you mention Michael Madsen to someone who's 19, 20, 21, they might not know who Michael Madsen is. They might have just missed that kind of realm. Saying Kim Possible in Christy Romano, I remember like she was one of the first actors that I've worked with that was kind of like a bridge to people that were younger than me, because that
Right.
show was like, for people that were probably good, 5 to 10 years younger than me. So it was kind of funny how like I remember during this film, you always get excited, especially when you're a young actor. What's the first thing you do? You say you're in a movie, and then you tell people because you're excited who else is in the movie. So I
Right.
remember like it was kind of a fun game because I felt as though this was a movie that had a couple, two, three people that you probably would know, Madsen, Forsythe, and Romano, and it was funny to see kind of who was like, oh wow, Kim Possible, and or who was like, oh wow, Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, just making this movie and fighting the zombie apocalypse, Mike. It was really just kind of an interesting time in my life.
Well, you also have a romantic interest in this film, and so as an actor, I mean, if nothing else, this movie was a really good, great experience for you because you're kind of doing a lot of things in one movie. Like you said, you're having father and son scenes, you're using weaponry, you're using fists, you're driving vehicles, you're having romantic scenes and tender moments, and uh, and you're playing the lead role or one of the three lead roles with a couple of real heavy hitters, or three or four heavy hitters at least. I mean, so you had to feel pretty good about the experience in that realm.
I did, and a lot of what motivated me was, sort of the unique relationship that I had and still have with director Glenn Ciano, because I felt so kind of excited, but at the same time having this kind of daunting task of, hey, here I am, a fairly inexperienced actor, getting the opportunity to play this very big role. Don't fuck it up. Like, this is, Glenn's given you a big chance to shine here. Don't mess it up, whatever you do. So a lot of the things that I did was, I remember in actors kind of watching this, here are some things that you can do to prep, because I prep for this like crazy. Shout out to Fred Sullivan. I hired Fred Sullivan to be my acting coach. And I remember I would actually work with him once a week for about, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks leading up to the film, and we would just break down the scenes. We'd go into every scene. I remember, we're going to talk about Kevin DeCristofano, who plays Jeremy in this film, and Kevin and I go way back. We go back to film school. If you watched the Incubus episode in our archives, you know a little bit about our relationship, and it was really cool to. He's another repeat offender of the Ciano School of Cinema. There, where like he was in. Kevin was in Infected. I mean, in Incubus, and now in Infected. So basically, it's one of those things where uh, being able to be in a room with Kevin and my acting coach, and we were going to be in scenes in the movie. It was almost like we got to do like an advanced rehearsal. And guess what, guys? I paid for that out of my pocket. That wasn't like paid for by the production. I, found out what Fred's rate was to work with me for a couple hours a week and paid him to do it, because that's how much I was investing in myself. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that could be tricky later, because I certainly was off book, and not necessarily everyone in the movie was off book. But that's a story for a little bit later in the show. Um, but yeah, I trained really hard physically. So I trained mentally. I got the acting coach. I'm working with him once a week, heavy, intense sessions, going through every scene, working with the partners so that, it's one thing too. Like, here's another thing. Like, if you're going to work with an acting coach, bring your scene partners. So you don't want to be reading with the acting coach, because then they can't watch you act. They're reading the fucking
Right.
paper. So it was really nice to have a sparring partner in there and have, my coach watching me. And then I physically trained. I remember like I got on a very strict kind of like a bodybuilding diet, a very similar diet that I did when, believe it or not, I wasn't really I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger by any means, but I thought I was for a minute when I was 19 years old, and I did a bodybuilding show, and I was on this crazy grilled chicken and sweet potato and broccoli diet. I'd weigh out my food, 5, 6 times a day. I'd be eating egg whites, and doing a ton of cardio, lifting weights like crazy. I remember Glenn told me, like, listen, I would love for this character to, in the postscript, there's a scene basically where you'll see like, this character is supposed to take an arc where basically he's just kind of like a dumb teenage kid, or a dumb 20 something kid, college kid, in the beginning of the movie, and then by the end of the movie he's like Rambo. He's like a killing machine.
Right.
He can defend the town, he can defend the village of survivors, and go out on salvage missions. And part of that was, you got to get in really good shape, because I mean, I'd imagine, if this is the post-apocalyptic world, you ain't eating a whole lot. So anytime, you're probably pretty lean, you're running around all the time after goddamn zombies chasing after you. It's the best form of cardio I think any man could ever come across. So it was really cool to do this flip, and I wanted to really, you know, do that not only for Glenn, but obviously for me. I mean, any actor knows if you're going to be on camera, you want to look as good as you can look, because listen, it's not always about vanity. Maybe it's 80% about vanity, but really, let's face it, and this sounds cliche, and you probably heard this before, but if you feel good about how you look, you're going to be more confident. And acting is a game of confidence. It really is. You know, like you're the person who has to perform when everyone else is quiet and watching.
Right.
You have to have confidence to do that. So, uh, big mental training, big physical training, and working with Glenn a lot to just see like what he wanted in this character, and there it was. So I was jazzed up and ready to fucking go on this movie.
Well, that's really interesting, man. I mean, it's a that's a big moment for you, man. It reminds me, you're playing Michael Madsen's son in this thing. The closest metaphor I have that to my own history is I played Sybil Shepherd's son in a movie titled Hard Luck that was filmed in Rhode Island in
Sure.
2005. And kind of like what you were saying about the generational thing, Tommy, when I was mentioning to people when that movie was first being filmed that I'm playing Sybil Shepherd's son, people were like, "Oh my God, Sybil Shepherd moonlighting the sitcom Sybil." You know, the Last Picture Show. I mean, she was the Prell girl, I think, in the '60s or '70s. And now, if I mention I played Sybil Shepherd's son to somebody in their 20s, they usually don't know who she is, which is a shame because she's done the L Word, she's done a bunch of stuff. She is a great actress and a great singer, actually. But it's just that generational thing where Kim Possible is going to have her fans. Michael Madsen's going to have his '90s fans like us, and then you're going to have people that even a generation or two older. And it's just fame is tricky. Fame is fleeting. There's very few people, maybe Donald Trump or Arnold Schwarzenegger, who cover various age brackets, but a lot of people are kind of compartmentalized, even among famous people.
Yeah, for every one rock, there are 100,000 Pauly Shores.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, and that's no disrespect to Pauly Shore. I love Pauly Shore. Um, but yeah, I agree, Mike. And that's probably from a marketing standpoint when you're making a film, not the worst thing in the world, right? You got a little something for everybody. You got a little something for the boomers, you
Right.
got a little something for the younger people, and you got a little something for the folks in between. So this one had a little bit of everything. There was an actor by the name of Michael Nikolowski, who's no longer with us, and he was really a cool dude and a great actor. And he played that kind of rugged dude with the gray hair who kind of comes in like a bat out of hell in the middle of the movie to kind of inject the movie with a little bit of energy. And he's already bitten and he starts to turn. What's cool about him is he played the psycho clown character in the Spawn animated series, which I don't know if you remember that one from. I believe it was the mid to late '90s. It ran, maybe even early 2000s. But just an awesome dude with a really great voice, and he's no longer with us. So shout out to him and his family. We miss him. Um, and also Wendy Overly, who played the crazed grandma, who was in, really like the first case in the movie, who kind of gets this virus and breaks out. And Wendy's a woman who worked with me on a couple of films, and I met her through the theater scene, local theater here in Rhode Island. Um, and she was just this talented woman who I had seen her in a few plays, and everything I saw her in, I was just like, God, this woman's good. And I cast her in a couple of parts, and then but prior to me casting her as a director, I worked with her in this film, and she was phenomenal, man. Everybody loved her on set, and here's this kind of very classy, woman who's kind of screaming and acting, like a ravenous beast, biting people's faces off. But then being, cut would be called, and she'd be this, uh, proper woman. It was just like really, really kind of fun, almost like a library. She had like the spirit of like a librarian, but could also like, uh, mix it up and really do her thing. So we miss Wendy, we miss
Did,
Michael.
Tommy, did Wendy Overly pass away?
She did.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that. I took a class with her, a voice and articulation class. She was very kind. She had a few people, not myself, that were kind of high maintenance students, let's say, and she handled them with class and dignity and kind of settled them in. I believe in your film, the Christmas movie with Ed Asner, was it Saving Christmas?
Yeah,
Uh,
she was great. Yeah.
I actually played her subordinate because she was running the post office and I was working there, right? So we
What do
kind
you
of,
know? That's right. What if you guys are kind of forever connected in the world of cinema?
well, she was a great lady. Man, I'm sorry to hear that she passed away. Maybe we'll dedicate this episode to her memory and also the other actor you just mentioned. That's really a sad thing, but it's always nice when you're in a film because then you're immortalized forever, so to speak.
Yeah, we miss her, and you know, again, it's fun to do these podcasts. It's not that it's fun, but you know, it's nice to just sometimes time goes by and you forget, and you don't think of a person for years. You ever have that happen? Anybody watching ever have that happen? Where like you know, you just go years without thinking of a person, and then something will remind you of them, and you'll remember like their spirit, and you'll be like, "Wow, I really like that person." And that's a nice feeling. You know, it's not a bad thing. You know, it was only so many people you can keep track of in your brain,
Right.
but once in a while, it's nice to kind of have those memories, and you remember that moment in time you had with them, and that's what life's all about. Okay, so let's move on here. We're talking about Johnny Chico, who's also in this movie. Johnny Chico plays sort of like my you know, he's like the big bro type character in the film. And Johnny's an awesome guy. Johnny is one of these guys who, in real life, I really believe he could have been like on SNL. He's a very wildly funny human being, very smart, very caring, very loving. We're going to talk about the movie Agent Toby Barks down the road someday. I'm sure we'll talk about that in long form. Johnny Chico was instrumental behind the scenes on that one, and on the film Vault, he was instrumental behind the scenes. So we're just going to touch upon Johnny Chico a little bit on this film, but down the road we'll be talking more about that guy. And here's kind of a cool thing about Johnny Chico. Let me paint a quick picture for you. And this is how unique my relationship is with Glenn Ciano, the director of this film. Monday, Glenn came over because we were just kind of watching a film that he had just made. That you know will be coming out later on down the road, and we're talking. And after we watched that movie, I just kind of put Infected on, and he's like, "Oh man, I haven't seen this in years," and I'm like, "Yeah, me neither." And I go, "We're actually going to be doing this for the podcast. We're going to be featuring this." Oh, really? Yeah. You want to watch? Yeah, let's watch it. So, we didn't think we were going to be doing a double feature that day, but we did, and we watched this movie. And let me tell you, man, to watch this movie with Glenn about 10 years later, maybe even a little longer, 11 years later, after we've both been through so much in the business, had our ups, had our downs, but ultimately, like, always remained brothers. Man, what a fucking experience that was. And to just kind of like take that in with him, it's something that I probably should do more, and I think all artists we don't do it enough. And I'm not saying you should like watch your shit over and over again, but every few years might be nice to call up a buddy that you made something with, dust off that old whatever, and watch it because the memories that rush through my fucking head in the short period of time that Glenn and I spent watching this movie. And Glenn said the same thing. Glenn was like, man, there's like a memory in every scene. Like in every not in every scene. I'm sorry, I'll take that back. I don't want to say what he said wrong. It's like there's a memory in every shot. Like every
Right.
single shot, he can remember exactly where the camera was and what he was up against and what had it go down. So fun to watch this movie with Glenn for nostalgia purposes and also to kind of pick his brain years later. And we're at the point in our careers where now we both made some films, and it's just fun to kind of talk shop with him. From like when I first was on this mission with Glenn, um, he was at a different point in his life, and I was at a different point in my life. So to like watch it now, where we're both a lot more mature, is kind of fun to do that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about locations. Mike, what do you know about Foster, Rhode Island?
Well, oddly enough, that same movie I mentioned earlier, Hard Luck, was filmed there, parts of it, and it's kind of rural, I guess I'd say. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't it often in Rhode Island you hear people say Foster Gloucester? Like, isn't
Yeah,
Foster Gloucester?
it's it's as the kids say, the boonies. It's the middle of nowhere. As just checking in, Miss
I
Ash
have
joining
in
us. What's up, Miss
whenever I'm
Ash?
in whenever I'm in Rhode Island, Tommy, I always know that if I keep driving long enough and I get lost, I'll end up in either Foster, Gloucester, or Coventry. That's like how I end up.
Or if you end up in Connecticut, you've gone too far.
Right, or
Mike,
Exeter. Yeah.
say hi to Miss Ash. You didn't say
Hi,
hi
Ms.
to Miss
Ash.
Ash.
How are you? Nice to see you, Ms. Ash.
She's back with us. She's always checking in. Got a nice little
Rural.
group here. nice little group here on a, what is it? Is today
Tuesday
Wednesday?
night. Yeah.
Tuesday.
Now
Man.
we started this at I guess boy 5 my time, 6 your time. So we're even in different time zones this week. It's very
Yeah,
exciting.
we're hopping all over the place. So this was a very rural shoot. We were really in the middle of nowhere. It was really cool because, again, you just can't beat a location like that. You know, you can't, having like a movie that's got that eerie, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere feeling. Anything could jump out at us from the dark woods, the big scary shadows from the trees. You can't beat that, man. We were just like right in that environment and it was terrific. It was like this. There was a really great camaraderie on this film. I remember every night we had the campfire going, and a lot of people were like staying at on the grounds at this little cabin. There was a prop, basically our props person, Jared. The guy's name is Jared. He was a stocky, rugged dude who could build or fix just about anything. He was an actual blacksmith. He taught me how to do the blacksmithing in the movie, and it was actually his property. And he let us kind of take it over for a few weeks. Um, and every night, man, we'd shoot for 12 hours, and then we'd go out to the campfire, and you'd drink whatever you want. It was a lot of the need to keep warm on this movie. So there was a little bit of the spirits going down at the end of the day a lot, and I'm going to tell a fun story about that in a little bit. But um, a lot of campfire stories, a lot of drinking, uh, you know, mind altering fun by the campfire at Rap, of course. And it kind of became this like fun fall party every night. So it was one of those things where I really enjoyed this experience. And now I think it might be fun to just kind of like, talk about key parts, some of the key moments and kind of the parts that when I think back and when Glenn and I were watching this movie, kind of what stuck out in our head. Um, one thing that I think if you watch the film, and I don't want to be negative, but we'll talk about it first. And Glenn and I talked about this, and this is why it's kind of fun to have these conversations with him. So it's not like I'm dunking on the movie. Um, but the makeup in this film is kind of it's a little inconsistent, and B, it's at times looks like Halloween makeup.
Are you talking
Like
about the
meaning.
creature, like the zombie makeup, or okay?
Yeah, I'm talking about the zombie looks. It's one of those things where like you can almost see, and Glenn actually pointed this out, like you can see like look, there's like the mark where like the sponge, you can see like the rectangle where like that little sponge that comes in like the Halloween makeup kit. And it's one of those things where like if you can't, maybe word to the wise, what people could learn from this if you're gonna go make your zombie movie, if your zombie makeup can't look really fucking good, and I mean really fucking good, like the standard for zombie makeup right now is very fucking high. And if you can't meet that standard, don't do any makeup. Don't do a fucking thing. Maybe have there like some circles under the eyes, maybe. Like my eyes look right now because I slept for 3 hours. Um, but maybe you do that. But definitely go less is more because I remember like seeing the strings, so to speak, in the puppet. Like I remember like in some scenes you can see like a character move like this, and you can literally see like the line where the makeup ends and where the flesh tone begins. And it's like, once you see that, you're kind of, as they say, out of the element. You're the illusion has been lost, Mike.
Well, it reminds me of that Dusty Rhodes expression in pro wrestling: "Don't do shit you cannot do." So I'm
Yeah.
sure whoever did your makeup on that one, or whoever did Glenn's makeup on Infected, tried their best, but maybe just the budget did not realize like how realistic this is, and it's a low budget picture, but it's like you need someone from New York or LA maybe who has done a bunch of these type of movies, and it's tough when you're trying to make a movie like sometimes horror films, Tommy, get compared to punk rock music. Like that's the type of thing you do when you don't have a big budget and you're just getting started. So yeah, it can be, and like you said, with things like The Waking Dead or The Walking Dead, the standard has raised for what people expect from these zombie pictures.
Yeah, and it's just just don't do it if you can't. If you can't pull it off, don't even try it. Mike, do you remember Miss Ash? She was an extra in Hard Luck. She said
Well,
she thinks the scene got cut. We're
unfortunately, a
sorry
lot of scenes got
sorry
cut
about
from
that.
that one. You know what? The
Oh, it
reason why
sounds
that movie,
like hang on, Miss Ash. It sounds like you struck a chord. I think Mike might have got a couple scenes cut on him.
no, the reason the movie, none of my scenes got cut actually, buddy. But
No, I'm just playing
there
with
was
you, bud.
there was a whole storyline in that film about ultimate fighting that did get cut, and maybe Miss Ash was in those scenes. Like they actually had the UFC cage. That movie. The reason why I brought it up a few times now, I realize it took place during the Halloween season as well. So there you go.
So it all ties into this time of year. So this was a time of year. I'm sorry. This was an era in filmmaking that we talked about this during the Incubus show. It was harder to make a movie back then. You know, I say back then. I'm only talking about 10, 11 years ago, but we didn't have the technology that we have today. The cameras that we were using at the time, it was either like your camera rig was going to be like $250,000 or it was going to be like, a couple grand and it was not going to be to the level where you could, so to speak, blow it up onto a projector. Meaning if you blew it up on a projector, it would look grainy, it would look shitty, it wouldn't be the right resolution. But right around this time, the Canon 5D DSLR came out, and that camera just revolutionized filmmaking for for a number of years. That camera was kind of the standard bearer and low budget independent filmmaking for 5 almost 10 years, maybe not 10 years, but for a good 5 year stretch. The Canon 5D was the fucking shit. It could push all the limits, and suddenly filmmakers could, for all in with lenses, 20, 25 grand, they could have a pretty kick-ass package and shoot actual films that you could blow up and put on a big screen, and they would suddenly be bona fide feature films for a fraction of the price. So in a lot of ways, Infected was kind of a part of a group of movies that were pioneering this new look with this new camera. So the Canon 5D DSLR, check that shit out. And hey, I bet you if you're a young filmmaker and you're listening to this and you're looking to get a cheap camera, because they're probably like dirt fucking cheap now, and you just want something to fuck around with that's still going to look good, get yourself a Canon 5D. They take beautiful still photos. You can't beat it. It's a pretty cool little device for your filmmaking arsenal. Um, so yeah, let's just talk about some of the favorite parts of this movie. I talked a little bit about my relationship with Michael Madsen, and I talked about how I had trained my ass off memorizing every line and getting off book. And then I have this like very intense father son scene with Michael Madsen right off the bat, day one. And I already knew him, so it wasn't, scary because it wasn't like I just met him that day, and he seems cool. It's gonna be great, right?
Yeah.
We go to rehearse. He doesn't know any of his fucking lines. Like not really one of them. And listen, I'm not throwing him under the bus. This isn't me dunking on him. He's one of the best actors I've ever worked with. So like he didn't know his lines, but the stuff that he was saying was still terrific, but it just wasn't exactly what he was supposed to say. And what that means was I'm a young actor. I'm new at this shit. Sometimes there's like playing music. It's like call and response. And it's like, well, I can't say my line if you don't say this word, which is the sort of the fulcrum to get me to say that shit. It's call and response. If you don't do the call part, I can't do the fucking response part.
Your cue.
Um, the cue, exactly. Um, and you know what? I watched the scene. I remember being so disappointed because there was a lot more to it on the page. And then I remember watching the scene with Glenn on Monday and being like, you know what? It's a pretty honest, decent fucking scene. And if anything, you could probably like see my frustration play out, and it works for me being like this frustrated kid, like having to talk to his dad. So that was kind of unique and interesting. It was fun. Like literally years later, I'm like, oh, this scene ain't half bad after watching it. Um, Even though like, you know, Madsen threw me quite a few curveballs. And again, look, maybe that was his intentions. Maybe he was trying to throw me those curveballs and get some. Maybe he felt as though I was kind of stiff and a little too locked into my decisions. What we got was something pretty honest.
I wonder if that's Michael's process, so to speak, to kind of just have the general gist of a scene, but not even bother to learn the lines. Because in this theory, not that I agree with it, but maybe the idea is if I'm going to be natural, I'm not going to be thinking of words in my mind. I'm going to be saying whatever comes to my mind in the moment. As a writer, that kind of pains me to think about actors doing that, but as an actor, I can see it going either way. I can see the frustration you might have had or did have because, like you said, you're waiting for these cues. You've put a lot of time into memorization of these big scenes, and now your scene partner, famous or not, is not on off book, which means memorized. So I can see it being frustrated, but like you said, the touch of gray on the silver cloud is that the scene had the energy of the frustrated son and the father failing to communicate. So it kind of worked out in the end. But during the process of this happening, it was probably kind of painful.
Yeah, it really was. But at the end of the day, Michael and I had a really great relationship, and we became kind of buddies. And in a one way or another, we became sort of drinking buddies. Like I told you, this became a partying set. This was an era in film, guys. The movie business has changed. So let me say this with a big fat disclaimer: it's not like this anymore. But when I first got into the movie business, it was a little bit like the Wild West, in the sense that, as long as people got their work done, people looked the other way and turned a blind eye to certain behaviors. And a lot of crazy shit went down. And I'm not trying to make light of that because, look, it's better now. And this is a better working environment and a safer place for everybody to show up and go to work. But there was a decent amount of partying that would take place back in the day on certain sets. And I feel like, I caught just the tail end of that shit.
Imagine what it was like in the late 70s or mid 80s when there was cocaine and hookers and booze and all types of stuff floating around.
Mike, I've had people tell me that cocaine was literally written into the props budget on most movies. And if you needed cocaine, you would just go to the prop master and say, "Hey, I hear you're the guy who's got the coke," and it was that simple.
It's a hell of a
Um, So yeah, crazy time period. But anyway, there was a little bit of partying. So, after work, we would have a couple of jacks. That was my go-to drink at the time, a little bit of whiskey. And I remember Madsen would say, son, where's the JD at? You got the JD? Hey, son, have a drink with your father. And he'd bust my balls and just, what am I gonna do? Are you kidding me? I'm 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
The legendary Michael Madsen's asking me to have a drink with him by the fire. I'm gonna say no. I don't fucking think so. So I go, I have my drinks with them, and then finally, like at a certain point, I don't think anything happened, but like the producers of the film, like there was one of the producers there that I actually forget the guy's name. It wasn't a guy that I work with a lot, but he was like, "Listen, we got to put a stop to this drinking. There's extras on set. Like we can't have extras see that. That'd be bad. Like no, like you got to stop it." And he came up to me and was like, "Tommy, don't give Madsen any more booze. Like if he asks you for the jack, don't give it to him." And I go, "Oh, all right, shit, man. Like, well, this is like kind of awkward. Like, what am I gonna say? Like, he's the fucking legendary Michael Madsen." I'm like, tell him no, just don't give him any. Don't no, you can't give him anything. And I said, all right, we're going dry. It's a dry set from now on. Okay, aye, Captain. I don't want to get fired.
Sure.
Like I don't fucking know. This is my first movie. Like, how do I know they're not just gonna be like, Danucci, you know what? You're the fucking booze pusher. If anyone's expendable, it's me. I could fucking easily be cut out of this movie. So I say, no problem. Yeah, get it. And then later that night, of course, we wrap, and Madsen comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, where's the JD at? Let me get that JD." And there's still people around, and somebody might have seen it, and I just go. And he's like, "What? What? What's the problem?" I'm like, "No, no." I'm like doing one of these. I'm like, "No." He's like, "What?" And I go, "Can I talk to you over there?" And he's like,
Jeez.
"What?" Yeah. So I walk him over. I'll never forget this. I walk him over to the side of the house, and I go, Michael, listen, the producers are kind of getting on my ass. He's like, what? I go, yeah, they're getting on me. They're saying I'm drinking too much. They're saying I'm acting a fool. So they said somebody saw me stumbling, and they're going to file a complaint. They said, Tommy, you got to stop drinking or we're going to fire you immediately. And he goes like this. He had this weird look on his face. He goes, then he smiles. He goes, puts his arm around me. He goes, son, they gave you a talking to, huh? And I go, yeah. He goes, I remember my first talking to. To write a passage for every young actor. Good for you. Fuck them. Fuck them. I'll tell you what. I won't bother you for that JD for the rest of the show because I don't want you. I don't want to get them in trouble and let them win. So you lay low and you relax. All right. You stay. Don't let them fucking get you down, man. And he gave me this pep talk, and suddenly I've turned the whole thing around. So maybe there's a
Yeah,
lesson. Like sometimes point the cannons at yourself and be like, no, listen, I can't because they're gonna
right.
fire me. And it
Good
worked. And
move.
yeah, it
You
was.
should
I'll
definitely
never.
you should get Madsen back in the mix for something and work with him again because I do think that that's one of the high points of this film is the chemistry you guys established. So I think that could be revisited in another project.
Well, Michael and I had this Elvis thing together. You know, Michael, Glenn, and I, and William Forsythe, the four of us, were all wild Elvis fans to the point where Glenn even puts Michael Madsen in Elvis Red throughout this movie. There's a color that only Elvis fans will really know about called Elvis Red, where like if you watch a lot of his movies, Elvis would wear red because it fucking popped in Technicolor, and like he knew that if he was wearing something red, no matter who else was on screen, you were gonna go right to him with your eyes. So we put Madsen in a lot of that Elvis red. And if you watch, man, Madsen's kind of doing like an Elvis in this movie. He's like a crazed cowboy Elvis with a fucking shotgun. He's badass. Um,
Right.
Speaking of shotguns, when we talked about the evolution of film and cinema, well, here's one for you. And it's not even funny to joke about. It's very serious. We were using like half loads with actual shotgun shells, blasting blanks out. And we had an armor on set. We had stunt people on set. It was done as safely as can be. But when I think of like by today's standards, none of that shit would have flown. Meaning like, and I don't want to talk out of my ass, but there is like a certain distance that you have to be between the barrel of the gun and where like the camera is. There was one scene where it could have been very tragic. It really could have. Like all kidding aside, we'll have an honest moment here. They're firing blanks at the fucking DP Ben DeLuca, who's very talented, and that's another thing. Quick aside, like watching this movie, very well photographed. Ben DeLuca really put together a nice, clean looking presentation of this movie. So Ben DeLuca is standing behind a piece of plexiglass to protect him, and Madsen's popping up with a shotgun, and this is not Madsen's fault. This is what he's told to do, and coordinators, stunt people. Madsen fires this shotgun, and he must have just been a little too close to Ben DeLuca because the concussion, meaning just the shock of the blast, like singed Ben's eyebrows, and
Oh,
like he had like little particles of, again, I'm not a big gun guy, but he had particles of like whatever the um, is a little bit of dust that sort of discharges out of a blank. And he had these little powder burns like on him, and it could have been so much fucking worse than it was. Talking about things that could have been worse, I remember one of my more. I had a lot of high points on this movie, and I had one big low point where it got scary for a second, and again, like this is where when you're a new actor and you're doing a stunt and it's dangerous, like the stunt coordinator, I'm putting this on him. You know, when I was younger, when this happened to me at the first, when this first actually happened, I probably blamed myself, and thankfully no one got hurt. But now that I look back, I'm like, no, fuck that. That coordinator should have made sure I knew what was up before we shot. So let me tell you what's happening. Pretty simple driving stunt. All I got to do is kind of run and dive into the car, and basically pull out backwards, just reverse, kind of like a one of those quick aggressive reverse pullouts kind of thing where like, you jump in and you back out really fast. Okay, easy enough. And I remember the stunt coordinator says, "All right, you just get in and just hit that gas. We're gonna make sure it's clear behind you. No one will be there, and you just pop, just pop that gas. And you got to really get on it because you're in reverse, and cars aren't as powerful in reverse. So make sure you really hit that engine." No problem there, right, guys? Young testosterone fueled 20-something-year-old buck. Yeah, sure. I'll get in and fucking floor it. No,
Yeah.
no problem. I get in, action's called, and there's all these other little things when you're doing a stunt. Like I had a rifle in my hand. I gotta take a couple shots, move. There's all these little beats, jump in the car. So you're trying to remember all this shit. And then for whatever reason, I must have turned the wheel just a little bit before I backed out. So all I was supposed to do is not, I wasn't supposed to turn the wheel at all. I was supposed to just put it in reverse and go straight the fuck back.
Right.
I put it in reverse and I turned the wheel and went back on a bit of an angle and nearly ran the fucking sound team over.
Oh my God.
Like almost like they were crouching,
Yeah.
like kneeling down, getting sound, probably like 10 feet away from the vehicle. And when I pulled out backwards, I almost fucking ran them right over.
Oh, jeez.
And they were crouched down too, so it would have been awful. Like
They
they
wouldn't have time to get up and move out of the way because
it
they were
would have
crouched.
it could have been very tragic. And I remember, cut, 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 cut. Right. And I'm like, what did I do? Because in my mind, I'm like, what? I went backwards. And I didn't
Right.
realize the severity of like, no, if you just cut that wheel a little bit. And here's the thing. That's why years later I blame it on the stunt coordinator because he should have anticipated the chance that I might cut the wheel a little bit, and there shouldn't have been anybody within a fucking 20-foot radius of my back tires. Because let's face it, what are we doing here? We're getting sound of a car backing up. You can't fucking Foley that later. You can't
Right.
get a sound of screeching tires after the fact. It wasn't important to have that sound team in harm's way over there. So, I remember just getting screamed at by him and just like, what the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you fucking listening to me when I tell you what to do? And he was like a Southern guy, so it was a little extra scary. They get that look, I'm fucking telling you instructions and you're not listening to me. And I'm like, and this guy had done like Walker, Texas Ranger. He was like one of Chuck Norris's buddies. So like
Yeah.
he was a very intense, old school fucking stuntman. And I remember him just walking away, throwing his hands up, saying like, these fucking rookie actors, man, I'm gonna get someone killed over here, not listening. And
Oh,
he was
gee.
like, and he just tore into me. And I remember feeling like this fucking big.
Yeah.
And guess who came over to me? Michael
Michael
Madsen.
Madsen.
And he put his arm around me and he said, kid, one of my first shoots, I destroyed a $250,000 camera because I guess I didn't drive the car the right way. You know what I said? Fuck them. That's not my job. My job's to get in and give you the best performance I can give. And if once in a while some shit gets broken, well, that's going to happen. And I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, but he
Yeah.
basically said, as the actor, it's not your job to be thinking about that. It's the stunt coordinator's jobs and it's the crew people's jobs to make sure that you're never in danger and you can be a little, you can wiggle beyond the lines a little bit and know that you're not going to fucking kill someone.
Well, Tommy, that's a great story, and thanks for sharing that. Because I think it's important. It's ironic in a sense that right before we went on the air, I was watching a YouTube video with an update on the unfortunate Alec Baldwin Rust film case, movie that will probably never get finished, I'm sure. And anybody knows what that case is all about. And shockingly similar in some ways to the story you told about the gun situation on the set of Infected. I think the lesson here, buddy, Tommy, and I wrote about this in my film book, actually, that's on Amazon, is that when you're on a film set, either cast member or crew member, you have to really take care of yourself. And we're kind of taught to be good little soldiers, good little boys and girls, listen to the director, listen to the producer, don't talk back, don't ask questions, especially as actors. But if your body's in danger, the ultimate champion of your own body, your own health is you. And I think what happens, Tommy, in big budget films, low budget films. I mean, the Twilight Zone had a helicopter accident, 30 or 40 years ago. People died, on that movie, and that was a big budget film. And I think what happens is people get so caught up into making the days, which means getting all the scenes that they need to be filmed to stay on schedule, which is important. People get so concerned about the money, the time, more so the time than the money. And I think what happens is you get into a group think of we got to do whatever it takes to make this movie, and if we have to take some chances or cut some corners, we're going to do it because it's so important to make this film, and that will happen. And so for the young actors out there, especially, don't be afraid to stick up for yourself because at the end of the day, nobody's going to care about your own health more than yourself.
Mike, that's an excellent point, and I'll never forget, just being very afraid that night because I thought this guy wanted to fucking kill me. I thought I was going to get fired, and none of it needed to happen. And the truth is, like, I just didn't realize kind of the danger that was around me. Things on a movie set can go from laughs, fun and games, smiles and hugs to literally something very fucking tragic in a matter of seconds. So that's some great insight, Mike. Everybody watch your own ass. Nobody's gonna watch your ass like you're going to. And if you feel uncomfortable about something, it's probably dangerous and probably something that you shouldn't even try. And here's like Mike said, you're not gonna get fired if you don't want to do something that makes you uncomfortable. You're not gonna get put on some kind of a list of people that, oh, we're never gonna work with them again. Um,
Especially if it's a union picture. That's Tommy. That's one advantage to SAG-AFTRA films, and I mean, we'll do a show on that. The should I join SAG-AFTRA debate episode of In Action. But one of the advantages of the actors union is a ability to have someone to check in with or make complaints to, or kind of a governing body of some kind to protect actors from productions. And I'm not trying to put the paranoia out there or anything, but I'm just saying that's the advantage of SAG-AFTRA membership as opposed to the wild, wild west of non-union films, which I've been in plenty of too. So I've seen it from both sides. But that protection and that union can be very helpful in these situations.
that is what they are there for. So if you feel uncomfortable and you think somebody's trying to put you at risk, don't be afraid to pull yourself out of them flames, because only you can prevent forest fires.
Yeah.
Um, so, Mike, we're kind of wrapping it up here. I'm just checking my notes here to make sure that there's nothing that I really missed. I do want to talk a little bit about this kind of post-apocalyptic postscript to the movie, where we basically see this kind of this village of survivors, and there's a voiceover that you mentioned where Michael Madsen basically comes in, and that was something that Glenn actually wrote after the fact, after this kind of first cut. That was something that could kind of like piece together this postscript that he kind of had concocted. Um, and you'll notice that this was one of those movies that just kind of takes a turn towards the end, and suddenly like we just get something different. And I think that's what's unique about this movie, the fact that it does kind of turn the corner at a certain point. It takes a little turn, and it goes from being this closed in, and I don't mean closed in a negative way, but closed in. Okay, we're in this cabin fighting the zombies that are attacking us from every direction. To okay, we built a little society by the end of the movie. We've got a little bit of like a functioning group of people, and it's kind of fun too, just for me. Like there's a lot of familiar people in that little village there. My cousin Rob is in that. My good friend John Del Ponte, who was the production designer on all of that kind of postscript sequence stuff, he was in that. And just so many people, way too many people to mention.
Is your
Also,
mom?
shout out
Yeah.
my mom was in it. Yep, I think my dad was in it, and also we've been talking about people that we've lost along the way. Shout out to Pat Del Ponte, good friend of mine, John Del Ponte's father, who passed this last year. And there's a guy who just always supported Jonathan, who longtime production designer who worked with me on many of my films, like a brother to me. And I just always remember Pat being excited about the movies that we were making. And I remember in that scene, he kind of walks by and does a little cameo, and it's just nice that we have those moments forever ingrained on screen. That's what kind of one of the nice little nostalgic parts of making films.
Well, JDP has always been very helpful to me on the film sets I've worked with you guys on, and he's very cognitive, John DePonte, about gun safety in particular, because I think on the Anders Manor uh, treatment video, proof of concept video, I think it was JDP. In fact, I know it was. That kind of trained me how to use the rifle in the scene that I had it. So
John is a very big gun guy. He certainly knows his way around a firearm. So yeah, that certainly sounds about right.
and if you had someone like him on the Rust set, that unfortunate accident that took a young DP's life wouldn't have happened. Sorry to get so morbid, but that story is really pressing in my head for some reason tonight.
Well, it was very tragic, Mike. Excuse me. And the last thing that anybody ever expects when they go, I choked on my energy drink. I'm not getting choked up.
I'll take over. I just say, folks, we're happy to have you here. I'll be doing some reading tonight of New Jack, not just my own book, Tommy, but I've got the memoir of the pro wrestling extremist New Jack.
Wow, that looks terrific.
Yeah, I started to read it. And then, of course, I'll follow that up with my own book, Fight or Play Basketball. But I will start with someone else.
I love how an opportunity. I'm choking to death over here on my. I switched it up, and guys, I'm not paid for these sponsorships. See, Mike's sponsoring his actual shit. I switched it up, and I had this C4 tonight, and I almost just choked on it. I normally drink Bang, and see what happens when you switch it up. See what happens when you make one little adjustment to the routine. You can choke to death.
Perfection.
So I love how while I'm choking to death, Mike takes the opportunity for the halftime team to run on the field and do a quick, cheap fucking plug for Fight or Play Basketball. I gotta respect the hustle. Okay, I'm back, guys. Yeah, that was a very scary thing. What I was saying was, before I started choking, was that you never expect to go to work one day and not come home, and when you're working on a movie set of all make believe. So very tragic stuff. And it's nice to see, like I said, this movie was shot years ago, and there was shit that happened on the set that just would never fucking fly today. So it's nice to see that evolution, of safety and protocol. And listen, I don't want to say that. Please don't make. I don't want to make it sound like we were running around like fucking cowboys and Indians, blasting guns in the air. We were certainly, reserved and safe. It's just that nowadays you wouldn't even have you wouldn't be in those situations, period. So we appreciate, the other thing for this movie is kind of fun is, we've talked about Chad Verdi Jr. before, and, he's a producer that I've worked with on many of films, produced Johnny and Clyde with me. The list goes on and on. And if you watch this film, he does a little cameo in it, and I think he's, I don't know, maybe 13 years old, and very young kid in it. And his sister Sarah is also in it, and it's just kind of funny because they're kids, and now they're in their 20s, and
he's got a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's a father, and these movies really are just crazy little time capsules. So again, not that we were negligent on this movie, just a different era, a different time period, things that probably just wouldn't happen today. But overall, this one was really terrific, and I enjoyed it, man. I have nothing but great memories when I look back at this movie, and there's a couple of moments, that kind of. There's one other moment that sticks out in my head. I remember, and it might even be an outtake. But I think there was a garage door. There was a scene where I'm rummaging through stuff in the end, and a garage door came off the hinges and like hit me on the back of the head, and like I was like seeing stars, but like still kind of on my feet. And I remember just like yeah, I don't know, like we all have those moments where like that might have been a concussion. I
Right.
don't know. Yeah, this is like it's kind of funny, man. Again, like 10 years ago, like you hear it in the NFL all the time, and nowadays they go in the blue tent and get into the concussion protocol. Back in the day, it was like, you whacked your fucking head, you'll be all right.
You got shook
But
up, kid.
yeah, this was a case where I banged my head pretty
What's the,
fucking good, and it was
you
just
got
like,
your bell rung.
he's not spitting up blood. I guess he's okay.
Tommy, I
Um,
did want to mention before you wrap up that you mentioned earlier that specific Canon camera that was kind of the gold standard for a while. I can, in my own memory, I can think of like the Sony VX2000, the mini DV cassette thing. Like getting one of those for me was a big deal. And then other was it DSLR? Wasn't that the big thing for a
the
while?
DSLR that is basically like the model or the type of camera that the Canon 5D is.
Right. So
But
it's just interesting, isn't it? How those standards can evolve with time and something that we think is going to last forever. The iPhone 12, when the iPhone 14 comes out, nobody wants their iPhone 12, right? So just that always happens with technology.
although, did you see recently, had you kept your iPhone 1 sealed in the box, one recently just sold for $34,000 at auction.
Wow.
A sealed iPhone 1 in the box, $34,000. Pretty crazy shit. Um, so yeah, next week, guys, we're gonna be diving into it's the Halloween season. We're feeling spooky. What's a big part of every horror movie? The special effects, right? So next week we're going to be talking all about special effects, some of the great special effects that I've been a part of, some of the movie magic. Special effects are great because it's a combination of science. There's a little bit of science in there. There's a little bit of engineering involved because often you've got to build some kind of apparatus. And ultimately, it's fucking magic. Like that truly is like the magic trick of film. Like special effects are my favorite. I like them. Like I love to me like watching a great practical special effect play out on camera. It's like one of the most exciting things. It's as they say, a sellout at the monitor, meaning like people usually just crowd around the monitor and want to see it happen, whether it's a what we call a guacamole gun firing a blood blast out of someone's head, or whether it's some kind of an actual explosion or some kind of flames that are going to burst up, or it's just always exciting. So next week we're going to talk all about special effects, how to prep them. There's a couple things that I learned early on that when you break down a script, like just kind of some ways to go through and say, all right, I need this, 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 like you're making a grocery list. We're going to get into all that and more, diving into special effects. We're going to try to do that next Tuesday, probably, Mike, at our normal time, I would say, right?
Yeah, next week I'll be at my friend Jamie Reborn's home in Arlington, Texas, but I'll have the night off and we'll be able to do this show whatever time you want, really. Um, After I'm at the San Angelo, Texas Film Festival for Disregard the Vampire, I'm actually going to have about a week off. I'm going to help my friend Jamie with pre-prep for his In Like Flynn film, in which I have a role in Arlington, Texas. So pretty interesting time here for both of us, buddy.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, we were rocking and rolling on different parts of the country here. Just checking in with some of our people here. Kim thinks that your plug of your book is very funny, and so does Ash. Look at this, Miss Ash. Everybody loves the fighter play basketball plug. It's getting a lot of.
They should start buying it and
All right.
reading it.
You can't force people. You can't yell at people to buy it. That's not part of the plug. He's gonna accost you into buying it. Uh, Andres is ready for some special effects next
Miss
week.
Ash should connect with me on Facebook because I'd like to know what her scenes were in Hard Luck because that's interesting to me.
Miss Ash is available on Facebook. I'm pretty sure we could make that connection happen. Okay, so we have Kim here, and Kim's got. I was an assistant to the makeup artist on Higher Methods, and it was cool to see how they did the special effects. Looking forward to next Tuesday's episode. It really is fascinating. The special effects artists are truly the mad scientists of the movie set. So we're excited for that. Also, real quick, we're still looking for sponsors. If you can think of any businesses out there that would like to get a plug on And Action Filmmaking Podcast, it could be anything from a bar to a liquor store to a pizza shop to you name it. We are willing to plug you, and there are some really cool packages that we're offering if you shoot me a message. Also, please feel free to follow me on Instagram at Tom DiNucci, on Twitter at Tom DiNucci. And the big thing is, and listen, last week we got to 100 views really quick, and we're excited about that. We're excited to get that 100 and push it to be 200 and 300 and 400 and build up this And Action filmmaking community. So we really appreciate y'all doing your part. And if you could, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but sometime this week, if you could drop us a share, if you could put us on your story, just share that link because we're really trying to get people to just be tuned into this show. And I don't know if you can hear Larry, my cat, is like screaming at me because he's so excited about the prospects of more people subscribing. So it's all about the subscribe. So if you could, take a minute, shout us out there, share the link, get people out there. We're talking about Infected. We're dusting off a great horror movie. Mike, where can people watch Infected?
Well, it was interesting. If you just go to Google or anything like that and you put Infected, I believe 2013, I watched it for free. I think on was it Tubi TV, but there's different ways you can actually watch this movie for free. I don't know if this is a bootleg upload, but somebody's got it on YouTube. Maybe the paralegals over there with Glenn Ciano should check into that if that's a legal upload. But there is a YouTube upload as well. But I watched it on that Tubi TV thing.
Cool. It's out there, folks. Just be careful when you go out there. There's a few movies called Infected, so make sure you get the right one. Make sure you type in Infected 2013. That's the year the movie was actually released, I believe. And if not, you can type in Infected Ciano, Infected DiNucci Michael Madsen. Any keyword like that will bring you right to it. And it's a fun watch, man. I watched it last week. Like I said, might get you in the Halloween spirit, a little zombie action for you. So again, thank you for watching with us. We had a lot of fun. We can't wait for special effects next week. And in the meantime, please do give us some likes, some shares, subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. And
thanks to the people that did share last week, Tommy, Anna, Kim, and a lot of people did share last week on Instagram and Facebook. So thanks to them for doing
that. Guys, you have no idea. It really goes a long way. It's not always one of those posts that gets you like a million likes, but people click on those links and they're watching, and it means a lot to us, and we really appreciate it. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on episode 24 of And Action. We'll catch you then. Bye-bye.